All right, it's ready whenever you are.
Imagine, if you will, that after a long night at work or going to the movies, that you are on your way home. All of a sudden, you are accosted from behind. Someone was waiting to steal your money in order to buy their next fix for their drug habit. You or a friend or your friend just happen to have a firearm in your possession. Feeling your life threatened, withdraw the concealed carry revolver. Your attacker, quickly seeing the threat, runs away. If not for our forefathers' ability to adequately provide for our freedoms in the Constitution as well as the Bill of Rights, where would you have been in the situation I just described? Would you have been in the hospital bed fighting for your life? Or would your mother be picking out what type of silk to put in your coffin? Actually, you would be texting your friends instead about your wild and crazy night that you just had with a druggie, all because you possessed and knew how to rightfully use a firearm.
Every one of you has been privy to the violence that firearms can inflict on human lives. I'm a mother of two, I own a gun, I've gone through a firearm safety course, and I've had an extensive background check done. I'm a law-abiding citizen that has never taken a human life. While some might take the lives of others, like Columbine, the Aurora Theater, or the elementary school in Sandy Hook, we as law-abiding citizens have gun rights in order to protect ourselves, our family, and our property. According to the University of Chicago in 2000, our Constitution states, the right of people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. But there are multifaceted issues surrounding the complex rights of gun owners, such as the rights, freedoms, and protections from criminals. So what about the role that our forefathers played when they first created the laws to begin with? Have guns, criminals, and lack of current laws being enforced, or the threat of new laws being instituted, fundamentally changed the firearm debate? What about other nations? What are they doing with gun control? Do people around the world have the same right as U.S. citizens? Is violence increasing or decreasing in America with people's right to bear arms? Who do we blame during the aftermath of a gun-related incident? The person or persons wielding the gun, the crime, or both? First, we will look at the history of firearms in the United States. At the core of gun control is the interpretation of our Second Amendment rights. Some people feel like gun ownership is protected and backed by the Second Amendment, while others feel that guns should be restricted due to innocent lives that are lost. And many feel that the National Guard meets our needs of a well-armed militia. Therefore, people would no longer need guns, ammo, or firearm training. The right to use weapons for self-preservation has been a long-standing tenet in Western civilization. According to Encyclopedia.com, 2009, the great philosopher Aristotle once wrote, in politics, ownership of weapons is necessary for true citizenship and participation in the political system. From the beginning, our nation has been steeped in turmoil, fleeing from Britain's tyrannical ruler, to early Parliament in the colonies, to the Revolutionary War. Our U.S. laws regarding guns have come from a deeply rooted system developed in England. Because most American colonists came from England, our traditions, values, morals, and legal concepts were initially derived from that country. A famous judge, Sir William Blackstone, from the 1700s, believed the right of having and using firearms for self-defense and preservation. This right or belief was used by the colonists in the Revolutionary War and was indoctrinated into the U.S. Constitution. Due to the increase in British military, many colonists felt very fearful, and this was justified with the events of the Boston Massacre in 1770. For many colonies did not have the money to purchase firearms and required individuals to own their own guns to fight at a moment's notice. James Madison, in the Federalist Papers, declared victory for the colonies. Because of the right to bear arms, people could protect themselves, their ideals, and their beliefs. With the The end of the Revolutionary War and the building of our country's Constitution in 1787 and the adoption of our Bill of Rights in 1791, which gave all citizens the right to bear arms. This right usually comes under the gun, with increased gun-related violence incidences. Many laws have been established over the years to uphold our rights, but still protect the average citizen. According to Encyclopedia.com, in 2009, our 26th President, Franklin Roosevelt, passed legislation in 1934 to impose a tax on manufacturing and sale of Grade II weapons. These weapons were machine guns, short-barreled shotguns and rifles, as well as grenades. The next piece of legislation was the Act of 1968. This stipulated that all guns that are manufactured should have serial numbers to prohibit transfer issues. These issues were establishing standards for gun dealers, prohibiting mail-order weapons, interstate buying of weapons, and penalties for using guns in violent crimes. This has helped some of our gun violence issues, but not all. With the attempted assassination of President Ronald Reagan, the Brady Law was passed. The Brady Law stipulated a 5-day waiting period for handgun purchases and a background check. There was also a second phase of the Brady Law that was established, a national database. According to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System as of 2005, the database had completed 60 million checks, with over 90% of that data being available to anyone within seconds. Many current gun control laws have been established after the extreme levels of gun-related tragedies that have captured the nation eye. For according to a Fox News report from December of 2012, the Obama administration is vowing to make control laws their top priority by establishing laws to ban assault weapons and high-capacity bullet magazines. I have briefly discussed the history of firearms in the U.S., and now we will look at other countries around the world and what they are doing for gun control and their current policies.
According to gunpolicy.org, here's a list of the regulations for owning a gun and statistics for homicide rates for involving shootings. In Japan, a license is required for a rifle or shotgun, while no handguns are allowed. There's a very lengthy process to get a license, and it's even illegal to hold a gun without a license. The homicide rate as of 2008 is 582, including accidents, 11 of which are from guns. In China, a person can only own a gun for hunting, which means rifles and shotguns. There are no handguns allowed unless you are a government official such as police or military. While China's homicide rate in 2008 was 14,811, no factual data is provided for how many were involved with the shooting. While this homicide rate is very high, we must not forget to mention that this high number does include euthanized. In Vietnam, only shotguns are allowed for citizens to own, and they must be 18 to apply for a license. In 2008, the homicide rate was 1,346, of which 834 were involved with the shooting. In addition, we have to take into account the lack of a true police force in many of the smaller villages. In France, a hunting and/or sporting license is required to own a gun. Guns are categorized into 6 different categories, and only rifles, historical guns, handguns, and shotguns are allowed for personal use. The homicide rate in 2008 for France was 428, of which 134 were involved with the shooting. In Italy, 1 of 3 licenses is required to own a gun. Hunting for rifles and shotguns, sporting for shotguns and handguns and rifles, or concealed carry for personal use for handguns. However, a concealed carry can only be obtained when it is proven a gun is necessary for you. An example is you've been shot in the past. In 2008, the total homicide rate in Italy was 615, 246 of which were involved with the shooting. In Germany, a firearms ownership license is required to own a gun. Their total homicide rate for 2008 was 722, 171 of which were involved with the shooting. In the United Kingdom, you need a firearms certificate to own a gun. That being said, restrictions are in place to make sure you can handle a weapon. A gun safe is required along with the reason to own a firearm. You are required to provide a statement for your intended purpose. In addition, a very detailed background check is performed on the individual. The total homicide rate in 2008 was 769, of which 32 were involved in the shooting. In Israel, you may own a gun if you've inherited it or received it as a gift from the military. However, you must apply for a permit and continue to keep the permit properly renewed and in service. There is no law about concealed carry. In 2008, Israel had a total homicide rate of 193, of which 61 were involved in shooting. In Canada, rifles and shotguns are allowed for sporting and hunting. Handguns are allowed but have strict regulations on the clip size and type of ammo used. In 2008, Canada had a total homicide rate of 611, of which 200 were involved in shooting. Overall, we see a similar approach to gun control in most countries with a low rate of violence. The requiring of a license and/or permit, which often includes intensive background checks and classes required for education on firearms. We have also seen hunting and sports competitions being a major influence to get a license, instead of self-defense.
As previously stated by gunpolicy.org, the United States is under that Gun Act of 1968, which states that each U.S. state or territory enacts its own gun laws. This means that each state is going to have different laws regarding guns. So depending on what state you live in, you're going to have to deal with these restrictions. According to gunpolicy.org, under U.S. gun violence and statistics, there's an estimated 283 million guns in American hands. Around 30,000 people are killed each year by gun homicides in the United States. There are also more than 30 people killed by guns each day. Compared to some of the other countries we have looked at, these numbers are way higher, which I think America needs to look at. We have to consider the fact that gangs in America help boost this number. As of right now, President Obama is trying to enforce stricter laws regarding guns. An example of this is a background check that he's trying to make everyone go through to get a gun. I think that is a good idea for people wanting to buy guns to go through this. You have to ask yourself though, is this going to lower the crime rate in any way? As said on the Bureau of Justice Statistics website, since the Brady Act, over 118 million applicants for firearms were subject to background checks. Of that 118 million, only 2.1 million applicants were denied. Among the state's reported reasons on why they were denied, the first reason was because of a past felony conviction or indictment. The second reason was the state's prohibitions on guns. Let's look at some statistics from an online article from the New York Times called State Crime Rates Show Scant Linkage to Gun Laws. In the article, it says that New York was ranked 4th among states with strict gun laws, but yet it is a top 10 state in firearm homicide rates in 2011. Whereas in North Dakota, which was near the bottom in firearm homicides, yet had the loosest gun laws. In analysis data, it says that nationwide in 170 cities, there's no general impact of gun control laws on crime rates. From 2007 to 2011, the gun production in the United States has gone from 3 million to 6 million. Since there's been more guns produced, the crime rate hasn't gone up. It's simply the person who owns the gun that we need to worry about, not the gun or the laws restricting them. In most all situations, besides maybe a freak accident, the person is the killer, not the gun. So we have looked at the past and present history of the United States laws, as well as the regulations in regard to gun laws and gun controls in countries around the world. We invite you guys to discuss with us your thoughts and opinions on gun control in the United States. All right, how many people have had history with firearms? Okay.
What opinion do you have on gun control?
I personally, like, coming from the Southwest, where guns are everywhere, I feel that everyone should, take a firearm safety course. It's the smartest thing to do, because it's not the gun itself that will kill people. It's someone that's untrained or, doesn't know how to operate a firearm that's gonna hurt someone. I agree.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think about background checks though?
I feel I'm all for background checks.
Okay.
I mean, I've gone through them to get my firearms. And as long as you're not a crazy person or, a homicidal killer, then you really should have nothing to worry about when getting a gun.
So with the background checks, I can't remember, but I read an article on one of the killers from some of the incidents that you mentioned. And I think he was some sort of college student that went to Harvard, or I don't know where he went, but the point is he had a clean background. And then after he shot everybody, he was diagnosed with some sort of mental illness. So with that, how effective is the background check?
That's
With that?
That's a good question.
Do you think that you should also apply for a license as a requirement too to own a gun, then to help prevent such cases where further training is required?
I'm not sure, I just feel like there's so many variables. A person who can evade such accusations with a simple thing as a mental illness. You know, somebody can easily snap with going psycho.
So, sorry, okay. So are you saying like maybe like a psychological exam like as well to I don't know, look for that or something?
Yeah, background check. Go ahead.
I'm not sure, like I haven't really thought it through too much, I just, when that happened and I read the article, I was thinking in my head, well, that's weird, but then anybody can have some sort of illness, you know, pop up.
Right.
And maybe sometimes it doesn't happen early in your life, but it can happen later on, you know. But, you know, maybe it could help having a psychological test as well, but I just feel like the background check alone is not sufficient.
I agree.
So, actually one of my classes talked about the psychological testing, because it's been proposed. I think the problem is, like, in sort of a similar problem with background checks, is people, like you said, people snap, but just because someone's like, we see someone is crazy, like, why would they do that, doesn't mean they're not functioning. You can get through a psychological test and still have those, like that, moral standard or the possibility to do that sort of thing. Like, the worry is not necessarily people who are crazy and are going to go around shooting everyone. The worry is someone who's going to plan to shoot people and isn't going to show signs before because they're the ones who are going to get away with it in the first place.
So what do you think we would need to do in order to prevent something like that or isolate it? I'm not saying that we haven't looked into that, but have you noticed that our gun violence has really gone up this past year or two? And why do you think it's gone up this past few years? Do you have any ideas?
I think it's also just getting a lot more publicity now too.
Yes.
because-
Yeah.
The media sensationalizing it?
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly, like there's these people are just so against it that of course they're gonna make like
Mhm.
huge big things.
I think I read an article about sensationalizing and people are copycatting what other people are doing. It's not that we are necessarily having more violence, it's just people want to be seen, you know, hey, look at me. It's kind of our society has changed a lot. We used to be kind of in each other's back pockets and we were really concerned about people. And now we're so isolated and we're just thinking more about me, myself, and I that we don't think of that other person. We don't think, why is that person not coming to class? Why is that person, you know, having issues? Why are they on meds? We don't think about other people. And I think too, why we've had so much violence, and I had asked, is because you have to look at our economy. Our economy has really gone down the toilet. And I think that that's a big factor in why violence has increased.
I was just gonna say, I think we make it cool, you know, like
Yeah.
the songs that people
Yeah.
sang and the games we play, like, the coolest video games are all first-person shooters, I mean,
Yeah.
it's different for everybody, but, you know, like, people who sing about killing people and how people look at guns and the heroes we kind of make up in movies and everything nowadays. People think it's cool to have a gun and, you know, kill people.
Yeah. And we
I think
start that
it's-
at a really young age
Yeah,
too with kids.
yeah, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, along with those same lines, a lot of foreign countries have a lot more violent movies and or video games. We actually have pretty strict laws regarding media in the US, so it's just amazing to see like why they have such a low crime rate, yet in America we're way up on there.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about that, America's crime rate. You had all these stats about all these other countries, and she talked about America, but maybe I missed it, but you didn't actually, do you know what the homicide rate and how many of them are guns are from America in that year?
There's 30,000
30,000.
guns that year.
It would range from like 28,000 to like 30,000 from like 2008 till present each year. So only like around 30,000.
As we have discussed today, the United States has a strong, deeply entrenched history with the use of firearms. As written by our forefathers in the Constitution and our Bill of Rights, we have discussed the gun control policies in various countries throughout the world. We have also discussed what the current presidential